Hello, this is Pat Cooney, and I'm going to start a series of videos on how I have organized this program that we call DecSystem or DecSystem, which is what we use to provide tools for the judges to generate decisions and to store reference information or to access reference information. The whole program is organized within Microsoft Word, which is appropriate, I believe, to the kind of work that we do, because we're basically working with documents all the time, so it makes sense to the easiest thing to do is to create a program based on a word processor, and that's what I've done. What you need to understand is that this program is really, the heart of it is based around templates and macros. And I've used templates as a way of organizing the various macros. What are templates? Well, templates are a special kind of Word document that serves as a model or template for other documents. There's a different extension for template documents. It's called DOT, or under the new version of Word, DOTM, as opposed to DOC or DOCX, which is for ordinary, regular Word documents. But again, a template is just a kind of document that can be used as the basis for more specific documents that are later used. Now, I have a whole series of DOT files that I have put into the CWP51 templates forms directory. You will see that there's a whole list of files there, and they range from the form decisions that we use to the standard letters that we use and the computation programs. But most of these DOT files, if you open them, they'll be totally blank. For example, this one. There's nothing in it, and nothing will go in it until the macros that are attached to it run. But other of these documents, for example, will have some information, such as the form letter, which will have the boilerplate on it, the header, and some text already filled in. But that's basically the concept behind a template. Now, there's one big template file that is the heart of the entire system, and that's called a global template. And I have put that template, which varies by region, into C, Documents and Settings, and then the judge's name, Application Data, Microsoft Word, Startup. And basically it goes in that folder because that's the folder that Word looks to every time it starts up to run any templates that are in there. And the template document is variously called PATS.m for the Escondido region, and then PATS ES, PATS LA.m, PATS SAC.m, so forth and so on. There's another global template called normal.n, and it is located in this Documents and Settings, the judge's name, Application Data, Microsoft templates. And the only reason I bring that up is I'm going to be showing an example you putting a macro into that template. But that's another template that runs, that is the template that runs every time Word starts. So all the, or to put it this way, I could have made normal the equivalent of pats.m if I had wanted to, but I just basically have an additional template, global template file that works on top of normal. Again, it's called a global template because it's the basis on which all documents are made, not just some documents. So that's the distinction between a normal template and a global template. All the templates have the DOT or DOTM extension, so Word can tell the difference between them and a normal Word document. When you notice when I went to the directory of the templates here and right-click the mouse, I was given the choice to make it a new or open it, and I chose to open it when I made in the last demonstration. If I were to click new, it would base a new document on the template. In other words, specific document on the template, and it would run the macros that were associated with it. It would that you get the same effect even if you don't right-click the mouse and just double-click the icon. That's what would happen. So in order to open the template document itself, I had to right-click the mouse and choose the open option. The templates work because I've attached macros to them. And what are macros? They're a series of instructions which are used to get a computer to automate tasks. And Word allows the user to record macros and assign the recorded command to a keystroke or a button. And a lot of the programming I've done actually has been done through that technique. I'll record a macro and then I'll work with the code that the macro created. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute. The macro or the code system is based on a programming language called VBA or Visual Basic for applications. There are books on this subject. Microsoft puts them out and other parties put them out. I actually learned everything I needed to know primarily through trial and error and accessing the help system, and sometimes I was in trouble, I would just do Google searches, and I'd usually get the answer. So basically, it was kind of learn as I go, and you folks have the advantage of having me show you what I learned as I went. So I should point out that it's that global template, pats.m for our region, that is what's the basis of all these menus up here, and a lot of the things that the menus do. I'll get into that somewhere down the road, but the reason we have that menu system is because it's attached to that template file. If that template file wasn't sitting in the startup directory, you wouldn't get this menu system, and then you wouldn't really get the if that doesn't load properly, that's a lot of times people will say, oh gee, I don't have the menus anymore. So that's why that file needs to be there. In order to create macros, you need to be working with the developer tab. And if you don't have, that's the tab I'm pointing to right now. If you don't have that tab, what you have to do is go to this Word Office button, which is way over to the left, and go to Word Options, and then the third item down is Show Developer tab in the ribbon, and so just choose that, and you'll have the Developer tab. So I'm going to switch over to the Developer tab, and I'm also going to create a blank document for myself. And what I'm going to do is, with the Developer tab, one of the options is to record a macro. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. It's going to record a macro that is going to, under this example, going to be called macro 1, and it is going to go to the normal template, which is applicable to all documents, as I explained. And I have the option of assigning it to a keyboard, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to assign it to Alt-Shift-A. Now I could put the macro someplace else, but I'm just allowing it to go to this normal template which is what the default is. So I'm just going to click Assign and Close, and you'll notice I now have a little recorder right by my cursor. And if I now type something like "this is a test," and then go up here and click Stop Recording, I've completed the macro. Now, if I type Alt-Shift-A, which is what I saved that macro to, the keyboard sequence, then that's going to call the macro each time. What I want to do is show you what the macro looks like in code or Visual Basic. And to do that, I have to go to the Visual Basic screen, which I can get to off the Developer tab by clicking this Visual Basic button or Alt F11. And you notice it goes, in this case, if you would go to the normal up here. Well, let me explain this. What this shows you, the big screen, is the code that is attached to the macros that are involved. The top left-hand corner allows you to switch between the various projects that are opened. Projects being documents or templates. In this case, the normal template's always going to be open, and then your whatever documents you're working on will also always be open. In this case, I have two documents up. One was the document that I was using to show you the about templates and macros, and the other one was this document I just created where we tested out the macro. And then the other are these two template. One's my own personal one that I've put in the startup directory, and the other in the startup directory. If I tried to click on Pat's, or you'll see it on your screen here, if I try to click on it, it won't let me get there. It'll say the project is unviewable, and that's because that's sort of a protection that's in Word. You can't really mess with that template, that global template, unless you specifically open it. And I'll show you how to do that later. To go to this macro we've written, we want to go to Normal, and you want to go to Modules and click that plus sign to a minus if it's at a plus sign, and then highlight New Macros, and you'll see that the macro that I just did, and presumably you just did, is listed here with the code. And the code is selection type text equals this is a text. Well, what does the word selection mean? Selection is wherever the cursor is, basically. It may also refer to a whole group of text that you've highlighted with the cursor. But if you haven't highlighted anything, then selection is just where the cursor is. So it's saying wherever the cursor is, type this text, and this is the text we want you to type. It's called "this is a test." Notice this is a test between quotes. It has to be, because that's what's called a string in programming language, and when you're going to work with a string in programming, you have to put it between quotes, and a string basically means text. So that is the code that went to our particular macro. Now, to show you how I can modify this to do some more programming and basically get the same result, I can instead say that A equals this is a test, And then I can modify this to get rid of the string here, and the text equals A. And I can even do a sort of further shortening of the code that Word wrote for me, and just do that. What I've done is I've made this is a test into what in programming language we call a variable. These variables in programming to me are a whole lot more logical and easier than the variables I had to deal with in my algebra days, which I wasn't very good at. But basically, variables are at the heart of programming. You basically take a symbol or a series of letters or a letter, in this case I just took a letter, A, and turn that into representing something that, and what it represents can change. And like I say, that's basically a lot of what programming is about, is manipulating various variables. And it follows a certain syntax. In VBA, different programming languages require different syntaxes, but in VBA, all you have to do is say this equals this. So A equals this is a test. Having done that and setting what A is, then all I have to do is tell it to type A. And notice I don't put a quotations around it anymore, because it's no longer text, it's a variable. So let's go back to the Word document I was on and run the macro. And what I should get after I hit Alt-Shift-A is this is a test twice. And I didn't, there was, there's an equal sign missing there. I had erased the equal sign. Sorry about that. So I'll run it again. And I do. It runs. It does. This is a test twice. Doesn't look very good, but I can fix that up by just saying selection. That's wherever the cursor is. Type paragraph, and that'll put a line feed in. So if I go back and I run it again, and I get this is a test written twice. Suppose I want to write it 15 times. Well, that is we would use what we call a loop. So we'll add some code. To set up a loop in Visual Basic, and like I say, different programming languages have different ways of doing loops, but to do a loop in Visual Basic, you use a variable and you say something, you use the word for x equals 1 to 15. And then we keep the same series of commands, and then we type next x. What that does is creates the variable x, and I could have used any letter, just like I could have used any letter or sequence of letters for this variable. It's just a variable like A is. But in this case, it's a numeric variable, and x is going to be 1 until it hits this command called next x. Then it's going to go back and repeat this command, and it's going to be 2, and when it gets to 15, it's going to stop executing. So watch. I'll go back to this document, and I'll hit Alt-Shift-A, and I get a whole bunch of this is a test. And let's see, did I... Okay. So that basically gives you the idea of what a loop is. Now let's show something that's even more relevant to how I design the form decisions using these same techniques. To do that, let's go to the top left-hand corner here under Normal and highlight Microsoft Word Objects and right-click the mouse and insert a user form. And all of a sudden we get this brand new screen, and we need, I'm going to make the screen a little bit bigger, and we need a toolbox. So that's up here. Normally it just appears. Now you'll see this, what they call the toolbox. And I'm going to grab a button which is called the label button by highlighting it here and then dragging, and then going down here to the properties of this label, which is what's highlighted. I'm going to go to Caption, and I'm going to say enter the text. And notice that changes what's in there. And if I want to make this more prominent, I'll just change the font to, let's say, 16. And now it's bigger. And I'll resize it so it fits what's there by just dragging these various things around it. Then I'll take what's called a different tool. This is called a text box tool. I'll draw the text box here, and I'll leave it blank. And now, one more thing I will do is I will take one more thing which I have in all these forms, on all the form decisions, as I grab a command button tool, which is over here, and put that there. And instead of having it say command 1, I have it say OK. Now I've finished my form. It's called user form 1. To finish off the form, though, I have to put some code with it, and just one line of code. And that's code that's only going to apply to this user form, and it's actually code that's only going to apply to this one button. Watch. I'll right-click the mouse over when I'm over the form, and I'll click this View Code button, and then I'll choose on this pull down some code I want to attach to the command button. And the code I'm going to put down is user form 1, which is the name of the form, hide. And what that's going to do is when that command button is clicked, it's going to remove the form so that the viewer can't see it anymore. Now I'm going to go back to the main macro by clicking New Macros here, and I'm going to erase this loop here, and I'm going to erase this, and I'm going to say user, I'm going to make the first command user form 1 show. That means that form's going to show. And then I'm going to say that A equals text user form 1 text box 1 text. it's going to, instead of saying that A is, this is a test, it's going to make A whatever is in the text box that the user has entered on that user form, and then the rest of the macro, as you see, is the same. So now, if I go back and I press Alt-Shift-A, it'll run the form. And if I put "this is a test" in the form, click OK, nothing happened. So that means I have to troubleshoot whatever went wrong with the program. It had the wrong code in the wrong spot. The code should have been in the command button. I put it on the user form. So I'm switching that over so that that code goes in the right spot. I'm going to have to take a precaution of resetting the code, and I can explain how to do that. You just go to Run, Reset whenever there's a program that hasn't worked, and I'll run this again, Alt-Shift-A. I'll type "this is a test," not the best typist in the world. Click OK, and then we get "this is a test" twice again. That's basically how the basic principle of how I've done the form decisions. And we'll now call it for this lesson and take it up with some more programming next time.